Hey, this is Fear Dragon, and I'm here with the only Jay Whipple.
Hello.
Hello. So this is day two still, guys, and it is, I think, probably like second to last match right now of the round of 16 happening. So, how's your Dreamhack Austin experience so far, man?
It's been a lot of fun. Tournament was pretty nice. I made a deep run. It was like I felt like I could have done better, and I felt like to some extent I wasn't even playing particularly well yesterday. I got kind of lucky with the brackets, and I played well enough that I could get to the round of 32.
You had some pretty close games with some really good players, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I think if I was playing at my peak, I probably should have beaten Probe because I think that's his weakest matchup, and like the games didn't. It felt like I made a lot of mistakes, and the games were still pretty close, like mistakes that I don't usually make. So hopefully next time I can do better.
Awesome. So I know that there's actually quite a few people, like especially in the North American scene. I know Joe is a huge, huge fan of you, and considers you like dark horse for 2017. Gonna have that crazy breakout performance. And I always think of you, and I always just think of like that replay pack that you gave me called the meme build replay pack. And that's like what I feel like I always have to describe of you whenever I end up like seeing you in events and everything. So tell me, what is a meme build?
It's a build that is not standard, and it does something. It usually centers around one particular thing, and like something that's not particularly used in competitive play, like drilling claws, or like for all I was doing like blue flame drops. And it's like I'll take like some weird aspect of the game that gets like almost never used, and I'll sort of like center a gameplay around that. Because like I've never been a person that's like I never really play one particular style. I think that's part of the reason why I never really get bored with StarCraft, is because like if I'll play 5 ladder games, I'll probably play 5 completely different ladder games. But it's like I like doing these weird like half mind game, half like creativity things where it's like it usually it's something that works really well against someone that like knows they're better than you, because they're already kind of on their toes and trying to be like, okay, well, if I just play a normal straight up game, then I'll win, so this guy's gonna try to do something weird, and then you just bring something so far out of left field that they can look at it and be like, all right, this is weird, but they don't know what to do from there.
What's an example of like a meme build?
For instance, there was one build I was doing for a long time versus Protoss, and also a bit versus Zerg, where you just open up with a Drilling Claw Widowmine drop, and you just like you go really fast third CC, and you just keep like making double Widowmine and single medevac, and you just keep like throwing Widowmines at his mineral line while going battle cruisers and getting like a bunch of planetaries. I didn't start that quite when I sent you the replay pack, but it was glorious. Yeah, it's actually pretty good versus Phoenix Adept. Because if they like, first of all, they're just going to try to stay at home and defend, and also if you get the Widowmines down, they have a lot of trouble dealing with them, and it's easier to get them down once they have drilling claws, because like their detection's pretty limited.
Yeah, and they're gonna like try and lift it up, and it's like, oh wait a second, it's already burrowed.
They're just like so worried about staying on their side of the map that when they finally move out, you have like a planetary next to your third, and you have like 4 battle cruisers, and they're just kind of not in the best position. But yeah, so yeah, I do a lot of like weird creative stuff, but like I don't know, like I guess the difference between me and someone like Ruff is that I don't try to use that to like as my gameplay. I try to usually use that to get me into a good position. Like the Battlecruiser example is more of an extreme thing, but a lot of them I'll just do like a weird opener, so that way I can get into a macro game in a position that I'm comfortable in and my opponent's not, because even if it's like slightly suboptimal, it's going to be something that I've done like 50% of my ladder games versus that race, and the other guy has probably just never faced before, and so like he's not gonna deal with it all that well, so it's probably gonna end up better than it should otherwise, and B, even if I end up slightly behind, it's gonna be a situation that I've played out a whole bunch of times, and he probably won't even know he's ahead. So
Yeah, makes sense. So you are one of the very, very, very few rare breed of North American Terran players that actually do manage to get results. You let out a sigh like you have some thoughts on this.
yeah, I really wish I had probably like picked another race, just because I think it probably would have worked better for my playstyle, because I think there's more abusive things you can do with Protoss and Zerg, because those races tend to just well, it's like Zerg in particular just tends to be like everyone follows a particular meta, and there's so much it just really annoys me. There's so much stuff that just like isn't used at all. Yeah, but like playing Terran at a foreign level is just very, very difficult because like I think the race the race scales the best with like insanely good mechanics, but the problem is it scales pretty linearly, whereas the other races it's more like if you're like a lot faster than the other guy, but the other guy is like a mid-tier pro, then you're not really going to get that much more of an advantage out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas with Terran, it's like so much of it is like I was running into this problem back a ways when I was just trying to find like super safe builds that were like that were like decent versus everything that I wouldn't really end up much behind with. And I realized like for Terran, that's like a bunch of times there are things where it's like that just doesn't exist. But the problem is like with Terran, a bunch of it revolves around, it's not that you're supposed to be doing the right thing, it's just you do a thing and you do it really well, and then you'll probably just end up winning well because your micro and macro gets so rewarded. So it's just kind of like a weird race, which is interesting because it's like the most straightforward.
Yeah. They're the humans, man. They're supposed to be the most standard.
Yeah, which ends up turning into something where it's like you see the Terran do something and you're like, wow, that really shouldn't work, but then they just like kind of out micro their opponent and macro really well, and then it works anyway.
Do you feel like it's sort of, you're saying that you wish that you had picked a different race. Do you feel like that's partially because you don't have as much confidence in your own mechanics and stuff, or?
I spent like about maybe 8 months like really focusing on getting my mechanics up to level, because when I first started going to tournaments, that was one thing that was like really holding me back. And I think like they definitely improved a lot, and it's like if I'm just in a decent position versus like most of these players here, not like the top Europeans, but like a lot of the players here, then I can like play a macro game with complete confidence. It's just that when you're playing someone who only plays standard, it's not so much about like your macro ability as it is about your ability to like do particular things with a particular build. Because it's like, for instance, if you're going 2-on-1 versus Zerg, it's not really like about if you have good mechanics or not. It's like it's about very specific interactions, and like if you can kill a certain number of units with a certain thing and then do something else. So it's like if I can get into what I can just like 3 bases, full production, good worker count compared to my opponent, then I'm confident. But it's like the path that you take to get there, if you're playing like perfectly standard, it's not quite the same as like being good at macro. It's about knowing so much about the particular build that you know exactly like when and how and the best way to like consistently like pick off a couple units here and like do some damage over here and clear like this amount of creep and stuff like that. So it's like it's just its own skill set basically.
Yeah, everyone's 2-1-1 looks a little bit different in how much damage they can do, the way that they approach it, etc.
Yeah, but it's like with because the difference between like a standard game and a non-standard game is like incredibly extreme. Because if in a standard game, it's like once a build has been done for a couple months, every single part of it is so figured out by both sides that like if you just had someone who had never 2-on-1 just like look at a VOD and then try to do the builds, and they would at their own level perform like really poorly, just because like they wouldn't have the knowledge of like, oh, you don't want to extend this far with your medevacs. You want to be trying to drop this particular angle, and this particular angle looks like it'd be good to drop, but all the Zerg players know that, so they always have their queens there. So if you do that, you lose health on your medevac, and then you can do less damage later on.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it's really cool because I think that it does lead you to be, despite the fact that I know you have some regrets about choosing Terran, I think you are probably one of the more unique Terran players out there. I do agree, like a lot of Terran players tend to play like pretty standard, and like they oftentimes are taking games with really cool like mechanical micro tricks or like outplaying their opponent. And I feel like you are one of the more creative ones out there, just like not even in North America, just like in general.
Yeah, like I think there are specific facets of the Terran race that lend itself to just playing extremely mechanically standard and only doing that. Like just look at Innovation. He does 1, maybe 2 builds in every single matchup, and that's just what he does. Yeah. So it's like I think because of that, I don't think Terran creativity is particularly good. It's just the fact that like no one really does it.
They're all Protoss players that are being creative.
Yeah, because it's like I consider myself like a creative player that has decent mechanics. So it's not like there are other players out there that they'll do like super weird stuff.
Rough.
Like, yeah. Where it's like, but it's like if you just survive and don't take damage from it, you'll win the game. Whereas like I feel with me, like my strength is like that's not really the case. It's like I just want to get into the mid game on an even footing, and then I'm like in my comfort zone.
Cool. So taking this bit of a step back from like in-depth in-game play and everything, I want to talk a bit about the North American scene. So you have been, I think you mentioned this right before the interview, that your first LAN event was Cheesadelphia 1. You had a pretty sick showing at Cheesadelphia 4, the most recent one, and a pretty decent one here. Like, how do you feel like the North American like scene is going in terms of like LAN events and I guess like the new Challenger system?
I think the new Challenger system shows a lot of promise, but I do think there are some flaws with it. Like them choosing to do like a ladder system for Challenger, I think is really good and something they should have done like a long time ago. But it's like really good that they're going from that angle. But the fact that they chose MMR over points doesn't really make much sense, because if you're choosing a ladder system, you want that shows that like you're not particularly looking for like the players that are just the best. You're looking for the players that are like putting in a ton of work and grinding a ton, which that's not what MMR is. MMR is just like a number that says your skill level, and which means that as long as you play the minimum amount of games and get your MMR up to a level, like, you're in.
Yeah, I mean, a tournament-based format with points would be really interesting to see, right?
Yeah, well, I think there are obviously problems with doing it only based on qualification on points, because then you run the risk of like having a lot of good players that don't get in just because they don't grind all that much. But I think like what they did with like this Challenger, for instance, where it was like half ladder qualifier, half tournament qualifier, would be really good if the ladder portion was points.
Yeah, I actually really like that. What did you think of the minimum game requirement?
It was something that seemed to kind of address that point, but like I think points is a much more elegant way of doing it, because that was an entire system Blizzard made that was supposed to balance like hard work and skill level, and they just kind of decided to abandon that once they made GM MMR based, and then just like go away from that.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, hopefully someone will come around and, I don't know, make a tournament that's based on the ladder standings and using points or something. That'd be pretty slick.
Pretty great if someone would do that.
Yeah, maybe. It'd be really cool if Blizzard sponsored it too.
Yeah, that was just a pipe dream, but
Pipe dream, yeah, maybe one day. All right, but anyways, I think I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know that there are some pretty awesome games still happening, and I'm sure you want to go check out Euthermal and Kelazor and everyone else playing. But do you have any final shout-outs? And also, one interesting fact about yourself that nobody else knows.
That nobody else.
You can think about this while you do your shout-outs. You look actually like more devastated than if I said like you're in a group with like Euthermal, Neeb, and Showtime.
Well, no, there'd be no pressure in that group. I'd be much more scared about being in a group with like all like 5,400 MMR players, because then it's like I'm not supposed to lose a single game. And there's a lot of a single fact that nobody else knows.
You can start with the shout-outs, man. You're stressing like a lot more than I thought you would.
Do you like like a fact that like nobody?
Okay, your mom can know. Okay, your mom could have known the fact.
But it's like, if it's for this interview, it should be about something StarCraft related, and it's like
it could be something on StarCraft.
A team of people that I talk about with.
It could be something not StarCraft related. Yeah,
related. That wouldn't be as fun.
I think there's still some pretty fun stuff. Like people have told me some pretty cool things.
Give us a fact about you that.
Okay. I have a birthmark that's like yay big on my left leg, and every time I go to the
DT Blink upgrade.
No, because then I wouldn't have a birthmark. It'd be invisible then.
No, the Blink upgrade.
Oh yeah, that's like a straight line though.
It's like a line with a circle around it.
Yeah, with little specks everywhere.
Yeah.
No. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you one. It's not one that nobody knows, but very, very few people know. So this is a reward for anyone that actually does watch my stuff and watches all these kind of interviews to the end. I am not a cheesy player. I'm a hard macro player, despite the fact that I constantly talk about cheesing and cannon rushing and DT blink upgrades. I'm actually like when I tried a proxy 3-gate, I'm like the guy that walls in my zealots.
It's supposed to be a proxy 4-gate, so that could explain.
So I mean, this explains how bad I am at.
It is kind of interesting though, because the only game of yours that I actually know anything about what you did in it was a game where you went 1-base proxy DT.
Oh, this is at Dreamhack Austin last year. Okay, but to be fair, that was literally because Neeb walked by and I said, Neeb, what should I do? And he said, you should proxy your Dark Shrine. And I'm like, well, Neeb told me to proxy a Dark Shrine, so I'm going to do it. And I won that game.
Yeah, you did win that game.
And then I tried played macro every other game and I lost.
You did get real mad at me about the barracks lift, though.
The barracks lift?
The on Proxima Station where I built it in the low ground and lifted it to kill the...
Oh my god, that was so disgusting. All right, this guy has like some dirty meme builds.
Is that going to be my interesting
No,
fact?
that's not your interesting fact,
On
man.
Proxima Station, if you build your depot on the high ground and you build your barracks on like just below the ramp next to destructible debris, and you rally your first Marine to just on the other side of the little pillar right near your ramp, they'll always send their first overlord there, and it'll get there and it'll be like one Marine starts poking at it and it'll be like, okay, I can just get to the pillar, it's high ground, the Marine won't be able to shoot me. So then it gets there, and then your second Marine pops out, and then you lift up your barracks and you get high ground vision from that, and your Marines kill the overlord, then you float back and build a reactor.
Yeah, and you only lose like probably 6 seconds on barracks build time, like as opposed to like floating it over a long distance.
You kill an overlord, which supply walks your opponent, and it drastically limits their ability to scout that part of your base, which is where all your tech's going to be, and it makes them really annoyed, and they're just very sad.
This actually reminds me of one of the things that Snoot said during his interview, because it was like, yeah, you know, sometimes you face off against like a player that you expect to beat, and then he does something stupid, like he just gets out 2 Marines and starts on your and I was like, oh my god, I know who he's talking about.
I wish I had the chance to do that to Snoot. That would have been great. But yeah, so I guess for shoutouts, shoutouts to Sloth Esports. It's a mousepad company that sponsors our team,
Beautiful jersey.
co-owns. Yeah. Their mousepads are great. You should all check them out. And they enable us to do a lot of great things in the scene.
Got huge mouse pads.
Yes, mousepads that'll like cover like this entire desk. They're great.
Probably actually like carpet a floor with them. They're that big.
Yeah, you could like carpet your entire house with them. That'd be pretty sick.
Yeah. Cost effective too, because
Super comfortable too.
yeah. I was actually thinking about that. Do you think,
You could get like a sloth yoga mat. We could get them to like print some of those.
dude, that would actually be sick. Like I don't think the material's that different.
Yeah, because it seems pretty similar. Yeah. Maybe just a little bit thicker. I don't know.
Thanks for the future. Anyways, thank you guys so much, and thank you, Raze. So hopefully be seeing more of you in the future. But yeah, see you guys next time.